against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Yo, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution, covering news, culture, manic warfare. Will be your guide through the separation of money and state. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Simply Bitcoin, the most watched daily Bitcoin live show on YouTube, Rumble, and X. The IMF said the quiet part out loud. They said that Bitcoin is better for cross-border payments, which is something that's incredibly obvious to us. It has been incredibly obvious to us for quite a long time. However, the signal is who it's coming from. Now, to be fair, this was a research paper coming from the IMF. That doesn't represent that the IMF feels this way, but we are making progress because this is the same IMF that criticized El Salvador for the Bitcoin law. This is the same IMF that gave a condition to the Argentine government when they asked for another loan. They said, hey, we'll give you another loan as long as you de-incentivize the adoption of Bitcoin within the country. But here you are. Here we are in the movie where they finally release a paper and say, hey, you know what? For cross-border payments specifically, Bitcoin is better money. And then we'll get into like the conversation of what is money in the first place, because in the actual definition of money and in money's actual functionality, like money isn't supposed to be political in the sense that it's never worked. Like this is like a very recent occurrence, I would say, in human history. I would say in the last really like 50 years or so, really since the inception of the Bank Secrecy Act in 1970, that government has the ability to kind of censor certain transactions. And the US sanction policy, which we're going to talk about today as well, kind of creates a situation where there's a bureaucratic elite in Washington, D.C., part of the administrative state. They are unelected in the sense that regardless of whatever political party wins in the election, they kind of stay in power. And the sanction policy gets to dictate who can and who cannot use the US dollar. So if you're Cuba, if you're Venezuela, if you're Iran, now the idea behind it is to punish the governments of those countries, and for those countries to eventually have a regime change because they can't use the US dollar. But what actually happens in actuality is that the people of those countries get hurt the most. So if you're a Cuban citizen, if you're a Venezuelan citizen, if you're an Iranian citizen, and I'm sure there's other countries as well, it's very difficult for you to open a bank account. And it creates kind of like this class system where depending on where you happen to be born, you can or cannot have a bank account. And that's in stark contrast to how Bitcoin functions, where Bitcoin doesn't care. You can just download a Bitcoin wallet and all of a sudden you're ready to receive Bitcoin. You're ready to transact with the global economy. And this is what they're fighting against. Like any time that, you hear arguments against Bitcoin, and you hear arguments against Bitcoin being money, or you hear arguments against Bitcoin being used for transactions, like that's what you're arguing against. You're arguing for a class system. You're arguing for a system where certain people have certain privileges and other people have other privileges, not depending on their merits, but depending on where they happen to be born, and you have absolutely no control over that. And I don't really think a lot of people would be okay with that if they were fully informed on the matter. So we're going to cover the IMF news today as well. We got a comment yesterday in response to our episode. By the way, we really appreciated the feedback. We went a little bit down the geopolitical conversation yesterday, but we got a comment. Basically, it was really interesting. So we're going to respond to that comment in today's video. And also, in terms of moving the Overton window, we have two clips for you guys from Fox Business. I think Natalie Brunell really did Satoshi's work there and just really moved the envelope, right? Because there are just so many pro Bitcoin talking points on that specific legacy media channel. Well, they interviewed the UFC fighter that brought up Mises. after he was like beat up and he won the fight, and like Joe Rogan put the microphone in his face and was like, hey, and he's like, listen, you need Austrian economics, right? So they did an interview with that guy. And also another interesting quote as well on Fox Business, and it wasn't people who were being interviewed that said this, it was the anchors themselves, which I find absolutely fascinating. But they said, quote, the Federal Reserve, which really is a bank for the wealthy, they don't work for the citizens. Like, wow, we are definitely making progress in ending the Fed and separating money from state if legacy media is saying those types of talking points. So clearly the pressure is working. Clearly, you know, our media strategy is working. We just got to keep pushing. And that's going to move the Overton window. And that's really going to wake up people to the reality that, hey, you know, money separated from state is way better than money joined with the state. Anyways, no more delay. I do want to bring up my very special co-host. He's always optimistic. They don't call him Optimus Fields for no reason. He's wearing a Viva Bitcoin hat, man. That hat is dope.
Yeah, I stole yours too, so I got two of them.
You got the white one? You got the one with the
I got
white?
the black and white one, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
I don't really wear hats, so I forgive you.
No, that's why I stole it. But hey, I'm really more interested on this comment. I don't think I saw which comment you're talking about, but we definitely went a little unhinged yesterday, or rather, I went a little unhinged yesterday. So I'm glad that the video's still up and people enjoyed it. But also the chat's going hard right now. They're cracking me up. They're saying that you know, opti for 2024 for presidency. So I got votes in the chat, Nico. I might have more votes than some candidates out there, but let's not talk about this. Some more real votes. Let's say that one. Another unhinged show. Anyways, let's get into the show. We do have a good guest for you guys today. Paul Keating. He's a part of the Bitcoin jungle in Costa Rica. He just told us he's working for Primal. You know, I know everyone in the chat loves Nostr. And then, of course, really, I think the part that I love the most, a health advocate. So I think we're going to get a full rounded show today for you guys out there. I say it all the time, fit body, fit mind. This is the most important thing as Bitcoiners, is to get your stuff correct, because we're ushering in the best money in the world. You got to live a long time. You got to be healthy. You got to think clearly to understand what's going on in the world. Anyways, Paul, how you doing this morning?
You got to be the change, man.
Dude, bars. Hold on.
Let's go.
You got to be the change. Oh, man. Well, I'm excited for today's show. We got loads of content for you guys. Guys, if you're enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Help us push the orange signal on YouTube, Rumble, and X. So whatever platform you're watching us on, and if you're listening to us on audio only, leave a comment. Really, really helps. Leave a review on the podcast platforms. It really helps push the orange signal forward. Anyways, before we jump into the show, I do want to give a very, very special shout out to the Bitcoin company that powers the show. And of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. It's a publicly traded company coming out of Canada that recently expanded to all 50 states. It's a self-custody by default platform. What does that mean? That means that if you can't buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well unless you're going to take self-custody. And after all, self-custody is the revolution. So it perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Go to bitcoinwell.com/simply. Support platforms that are self-custody by default. Also, go check out the platform. It's incredibly easy to sign up to. All you got to do is you put in your email, you press join, the fast account verification. It's incredibly easy. They're releasing recurring purchases soon, free and automatic withdrawals, 1% fee and nothing else. Freedom money looks good on you. Go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today and support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramp platforms. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. We have a lot to talk about today. Let's check it out.
The Bitcoin numbers.
Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Is your seed phrase really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them on paper. Don't store your generational wealth on paper. Paper's prone to water damage, fire damage. You want to put your generational wealth on one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Your words are actually stamped into this metal plate with this hammer and these letter stamps. And once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamped seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin with peace of mind for the long haul. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. All right, everybody, I made it incredibly easy for you guys. You could scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to the Stamp Seed website where you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. Don't put yourself in a situation where you have to explain to your grandchildren why you lost your generational wealth because you didn't properly secure your seed words. Stamp them on titanium, one of the strongest metals on planet Earth. Use promo code SIMPLY to get yourself a Stamp Seed seed storage kit. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 66,630 sats per dollar, 1,501. Market cap 1.31 trillion. Decline from all-time high 9.7%. Block height 840,544. Halving estimate March 16th, 2028. Realized monetary inflation 1.73%. Forward monetary inflation. Here is the signal. Is why I added it to the numbers. 0.85%. Even if governments get their inflation rates back to that 2% number, the forward-looking monetary inflation rate for Bitcoin is already significantly lower. And you know what? 4 years from now, that's going to get cut in half again, right? So I think it's a testament to, of course, Bitcoin's monetary policy. It's set in stone, doesn't change, and it's superior to everyone else's. And I think people around the world are going to start to realize that. They're going to start to awaken to that because Bitcoin just has better incentives. Annual mining revenue, I like this number, $14.2 billion. It's a massive industry that are just like in the business of mining Bitcoin, in the process of mining Bitcoin, right? You know, they're technically securing the Bitcoin blockchain, technically. Money supply, 19,688,983 Bitcoin. There's still roughly roughly 1.3 million Bitcoin yet to be mined, but that's going to take a very, very long time. Anyways, I did want to address this comment from yesterday. Someone was watching our video when we started talking about Congress waving the flags of Ukraine, celebrating sending another $60 billion to fund a foreign war. And this comment from Svir Smadal said, I like your channel, but this time your worldview is short-sighted. The world looks very different if you a border and sea next to Russia. Us in Norway have to support Ukraine. Russia is totalitarian. If they take Ukraine, who's next? Finland, Norway. Norway is the main supplier of energy to Europe. You can imagine what that means. The U.S. would be much weaker than a weak Europe. Think about it. Understand evil. Understand what risks are even with Bitcoin being more used. I mean, bro, what I got to say is like, those sound like talking points. Like I've heard those talking points being used before in legacy media. And if you take a look at this, right, which is like the actual, you're saying, okay, NATO and all this stuff, since NATO was literally created because of the Soviet Union, right? And it hasn't been Russia who has expanded. It's been NATO who's expanded up to the point in 2004. Now you have NATO countries that are bordering Russia, right? 2004, 2009, more countries joining NATO. 1999, Poland, Hungary joining NATO. So, I mean, and then let's talk about the Ukraine war, right? The Ukraine war is happening in the border of Ukraine and Russia in the Russian-speaking provinces of Ukraine. That's when the war is happening. So my question to you is that if governments can't afford this war in the first place, right? They don't collect enough in tax revenue. Why don't they go to their populace and say, hey, guys, you know, we're raising taxes to fund this foreign war? No, they can't do that because it's not popular enough to do that. You know what they do instead is that they print the difference, and it's kind of like this hidden taxation of inflation. And then that has catastrophic consequences for the lower and middle classes. That's why you keep hearing, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's not due to capitalism. That's due to the wealth redistribution mechanisms of fiat money. So yeah, I get you and I hear you, but I'm going to tell you what I told everyone on yesterday's episode. I think you should do your own research rather than just relying on the talking points of the legacy mainstream media, because that's what it sounds like to me. Anyways, that's my opinion, but I love the discussion and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. Drop it down in the comments. Anyways, I do want to get to this UFC fighter. We played you a clip for you guys. I think it was like last week or so. But basically he won a fight and he was all beat up and stuff. And part of his fighting speech to Joe Rogan was like, I love freedom of speech. I love the Second Amendment. And if you love your country, you should study Austrian economics. Well, this is a follow-up interview on Fox Business. And again, these interviews are incredibly important because UFC interviews, you could say they're in an echo chamber. Simply Bitcoin content, you can make an argument that it's in an echo chamber. But interviews on Fox Business, that's legacy media, it has a more mainstream appeal for now. So let's check out what he has to say.
I also read that you think interest rates are going higher and that you want to get paid your MMA bonus in Bitcoin, right?
100%. That's a huge part of the Austrian economic school, right? Supply and demand and scarcity. And I think Bitcoin represents that. The Bitcoin, even though is dropping a little bit, I think is a defense against the tyrant state. Is a defense against inflation too, because eventually it's going to go up because everybody's knowing what Bitcoin is. And the dollar is losing value because the interest rates, because the government keeps printing money,
right,
keep doing handouts, keep doing welfare to the people. They are not trying to control the supply of the money. They are always printing more. So I think that's going to be beneficial to Bitcoin.
So guys, you have to understand how consequential this is. This isn't just a Bitcoiner. These aren't people that are talking about Bitcoin or working in Bitcoin companies that are in the Bitcoin industry. This is someone that works in an entirely different industry, and he's saying the Bitcoin talking points. You guys want to know how we change things? You guys want to know how things actually change? Like there's actual change to the system. There's actual change. Imagine if everyone, 50% of the population was speaking like he was. They would be in trouble because they don't have a response to that, right? It's kind of like similar to the comment that I was reading to you earlier, right? It's like we have to support NATO. My response to that is we can't afford to. The U.S. spends $1.7 trillion more than it collects in tax revenue. We can't afford to do those things, but fiat money gives the illusion that we can afford to give it. But again, it's not free. This money being printed is not free. It's wealth redistribution. If you have dollars, if you're holding dollars, they're being devalued every time they print money, right? So clearly, this guy, Renato, he's a absolutely badass fighter. He just won, but he knows the Bitcoin talking points. Now, I would say this is a big deal, right? Again, moving the Overton window, waking up people to the reality that fiat money is a scam, waking up to the reality that Bitcoin is the soundest money the world has ever seen. But it wasn't only him just saying these talking points. Check out Fox Business once again, and this is crazy. And it's not playing. Let me refresh.
Is so scary because that really could happen in America. The Federal Reserve has already talked about potentially a bail-in. They will not bail the banks out again, Charles. If anything happens, money could be frozen and clients will be locked out.
Do you believe that, though?
No, I don't believe that would happen.
No, do you believe they won't bail the banks out? Two things. You've got the Federal Reserve, which really is a bank for the wealthy.
Right.
I mean, it's a bank for the banks and a bank for the wealthy. That's who they work for. They don't work for the U.S. for citizens. It's time people understood that.
I'm so glad you said this because so many people people think that because we're the world reserve currency that we have to bail out the dollar, that we won't let our system collapse. What they don't understand is what the BRICS nations are doing to basically do cross-border payment transactions in local currencies without a reserve alternative to the dollar. So yes, I believe with the amount of deficits that we're running, that we just seem to carte blanche. We're not in a war right now directly. We're not in a pandemic, and yet we're still getting a $7.3 trillion budget proposal from this administration. I think the rest of the world is saying America has taken modern monetary theory way too far.
So the signal out of all of that, and really, again, I'm going to give it where credit's due, because Natalie was who originally, and I believe his name is Charles Payne, the Fox Business anchor. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But there was Natalie that just kept hammering these points home when going on his show. I believe that he was also brought on her show. But the key word here is the Federal Reserve, which really is a bank for the wealthy. They don't work for the citizens. And I think that's the key point. Now, why is that? Well, it's simple, right? Every time they print money, it's a wealth redistribution mechanism from the people, from the lower middle classes that don't have the means to save in assets. They save in fiat, back to the very wealthy that do have the means to save in assets. Therefore, they do benefit from asset inflation, and back to the government. That's the scheme. That's how it works. And the fact that it's not only MMA fighters that are saying this, but anchors on legacy media that are starting to say this tells me that we're winning the narrative trench warfare, that we're winning the media game. We got to keep on the pressure. We got to keep pushing forward so the mainstream consciousness wakes up to the scam that is fiat money, and then perhaps in the process, really start to wisen up to politics and say, hey, maybe this isn't left versus right. Maybe it's really green versus orange. Maybe it's the party of green, the party of fiat, nihilism, poverty, slavery, versus the party of Bitcoin, peace, prosperity, and opportunity, right? So we're definitely heading in the right direction. These are historic clips, guys. Look, when me and Opti got into Bitcoin, what was it, 2016, 2017, Opti, could you ever have imagined, legacy media basically saying the Federal Reserve is for rich people? Could you ever have imagined an MMA fighter beat up talking to Joe Rogan saying, you got to read Mises, you got to read the Austrian School of Economics? Like, ladies and gentlemen, this is what winning looks like. This is what winning the hearts and minds of people looks like. And 5-10 years from now, when we have 20, 30, 40, 50% of the population saying those same talking points, man, the party of fiat is in trouble. That's what I got to say. Opti, what's your take? And then we'll pass it on to Paul.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me, could I imagine this? And I mean, probably when I first got into Bitcoin, I thought that this would never happen. But once you understand Bitcoin, I would say that I did think this would happen, because I fundamentally, and this is our thesis here at Simply Bitcoin, is that the Bitcoin culture will go mainstream and people will soon, maybe slowly, become Bitcoiners. So I'm not surprised that this is happening. Maybe I'm a little more surprised that it's happening so quickly. And, shouts out to Charles Payne and Joe Kernan out there. They're my favorite Bitcoin podcasters, not only because they get it, but because they're on the legacy system, corporate media channels spreading the signal, and you just love to see it. And I'm just going to be short on this one. I think we've talked about this so many times on the show, but I just find it hilarious that an MMA fighter understands economics better than the quote unquote PhD expert economist out there. And you just love to see it. The bread and circuses are crumbling out there, and the gladiators understand what's going on in the world better than those whose job it is to understand what's going on better. Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is the fiat system collapsing. This is it crumbling on itself. And hey, this signal is going to spread more, and it's going to spread with the demographic that I always say is the only demographic that actually changes things, that 18 to 35-year-old fighting age military male. And the more they wake up to the scam that is the fiat system, the better the future of humanity will be. So you just love to see it. Hopefully people will actually dig in and read Mises. But hey, most people don't like to read books out there. So hopefully they're listening to at least Simply Bitcoin and getting the signal. Anyways, Paul, jump in. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you kind of wonder why, Aaron Rodgers has come out to be a Bitcoiner and he's talked about it before, but sometimes it's like, why isn't he always talking about it? Whereas this Renato guy just comes out of the woodwork, and you could tell he's just, lasers coming out of his eyes talking about Bitcoin all the time. and Mises and whatnot. It's awesome to see these little things kind of move the needle. And I'm always wondering, like, how do you make Bitcoin cool and mainstream? I mean, it is just kind of every day doing your thing, but I think we're making some real change.
Absolutely. I think we're making real change. And it's a combined effort, right? It's each and every single one of us doing just playing our part in this, right? So even if you don't have a platform, even if you decide to be an anon on X or on Nostr, right? Every single tweet counts. Every single time you see a politician talking about how inflation is being lowered, how you see this European Central Bank talking about how Bitcoin is the devil and fiat money is the future. Get in the comments, make your voices heard. Like, this is how we win. This is how we win this narrative trench warfare. This is how we move the envelope and we wake up people to the reality that fiat is a scam, right? That no man should have the ability to create money for free that another man has to work for, right? That's the world that we're fighting for, and we're definitely winning, especially when you see these types of clips. Anyways, I give a shout out to our merch. Guys, we did lower the prices, by the way. It is a limited drop. We teamed up with Bitcoin artist, Opti, how do you say his name? I always butcher it. Asanoa, there we go.
It's Asanoa, not Asanoa.
Asanoa. But yeah, guys, check it out. There's ladies merch. There's the Bitcoin pill. There's the Peaceful Bitcoin Revolution tee. There's a gold Bitcoin snapback, the gold Bitcoin dad hat. We did run out of some sizes, by the way, guys. So get yours while supplies last. This is one of my favorites. It's absolutely badass. It's so cool. And again, we pay attention to the detail. The tag and everything says Bitcoiner slavery. So get yours while supplies last. Yeah. Anyways, I do want to move on to the news. We have a lot to talk about today. Let's check it out. Here we go.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are selling a strand of Paul's hair. 1 Bitcoin for a strand. It's by popular request. I see it.
There's so much sand in here, you guys don't even understand.
The sand is included in the package. Yeah, guys, get in contact with Paul. Anyways, all seriousness, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Passport by Foundation Devices. Guys, remember, not your keys, not your cheese. So you want to get yourself a hardware wallet, and we can't recommend enough Passport by Foundation Devices. Completely open source, absolutely beautiful, incredibly easy to use. You could pair it up with the Envoy app, and it makes using Bitcoin in cold storage incredibly easy. Can't recommend it enough, guys. Check out Passport by Foundation Devices. All right, quick ETF update. The BlackRock ETF is at 273,596. The Fidelity ETF 153,842. The ARK Invest 43,516. The BlackRock ETF is very, very close to catching up the Grayscale ETF. Very, very interesting. Anyways, so I do want to talk about the IMF. I do want to talk about that, like the idea, the whole topic of what is money, what money should be used for. Here's Investopedia. Here's their definition of money. It says money is an item or medium of exchange that symbolizes perceived value. As a result, it is accepted by people for the payment of goods and services, as well as the repayment of loans. Money makes the world go round. Economies rely on money to facilitate transactions and to power financial growth. Typically, it is economists who define money, where it comes from, what it's worth. Here are the multifaceted characteristics of money. I don't know about you guys, but even on Investopedia, politics is not mentioned. It's not even there. It doesn't say money is political. Money should be used as a weapon. It doesn't mention sanctions. It doesn't mention any of that. But we live in a world since really the 1970, since, you know, I would say less than 100 years, money has been weaponized on a global scale, and it is currently a tool used by the US government in order to go against governments that are enemies of the US government, right? So specifically, when Russia invaded Ukraine, one of the talking points for justifying the freezing of Russian assets owned by its citizens, not by the Russian government only, worldwide is, this is going to incentivize regime change. Right? That was one of the talking points. That was one of the justifications, right? One of the things that was passed in the recent Ukraine bill was that they were going to take the assets that belong to Russia and give them to Ukraine, right? So it's kind of like this weaponization of money. The thing is that when you weaponize money, the quote unquote enemies of the US, you heard the Fox anchor lady talking about it. She was referencing the BRICS nations. You know what they're going to start doing? They're going to start looking for alternatives, right? And then it's interesting because, you know, it's kind of like the US shooting itself in the metaphorical foot, because if they have the privilege of the global reserve currency and they're incentivizing people to use something different because they've politicized the money, that's only going to go back and hurt the US, specifically the lower and middle classes in the US that benefit tremendously from earning in the world's reserve currency, right? If the US loses world reserve currency status and you're not holding Bitcoin, the dollar becomes worth, it's not worth more than, you know, the Argentinian peso. Like, it's the same thing. Like, the reason the US government's able to print this tremendous amount of money is because it has world reserve currency status. But if it keeps playing politics with the money, then you're incentivizing people to seek for alternatives, right? So anyway, so here's the paper that I wanted to reference, coming specifically out of the International Monetary Fund. It was released April 5th, 2024. You guys could search for it yourself. And the name of the paper is A Primer on Bitcoin Cross-Border Flows, Measurement, and Drivers. Now, the part that I wanted to focus on in this paper is specifically, according to the IMF, residents of countries with restrictive financial regulations are turning to Bitcoin to move capital across borders more freely. The authors wrote, off-chain cross-border flows seem correlated with incentives to avoid capital flow restrictions, right? And again, like, this is the way that money is supposed to work, right? This is the way that it's always worked. In this kind of like digital world where, you know, most people are outsourcing the responsibility of the storage of their wealth to like a financial institution, to a bank, it became incredibly easy for the government, for governments and nation states to put pressure on a handful of institutions to say, hey, freeze this person's account, you know, capital controls, capital this. But this isn't the case when you can memorize 12 to 24 words and you could store theoretically millions, billions, if not trillions of dollars in your mind. You should definitely stamp it on titanium, but if you're in a pickle, you kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. So interesting that the IMF is getting to a point where they're admitting this. This is the same IMF that, you know, according to an episode that we did a couple weeks ago, and we were citing this original article released by our friends over at Bitcoin Magazine, the IMF is still demanding changes to El Salvador's Bitcoin law. The IMF is reportedly demanding changes to El Salvador's pioneering Bitcoin law amid $1.4 billion credit negotiations. Now, after this, Nayib Bukele has gone out on record and saying that's not true. They're actually giving us more money. But we do know the IMF's initial reaction to when El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. they absolutely lost their minds. They said, El Salvador was going to spontaneously combust. The exact opposite happened. El Salvador has been able to repay its debts. The economy of El Salvador has been flourishing. The crime has been going down. So everything that the IMF predicted was going to happen because they made Bitcoin legal tender never came true. Now, this is the same IMF that tapped on Argentina and they said, listen, we'll give you this $45 billion loan if, quote, you would discourage crypto usage, right? It's the same IMF. So it's the same IMF that really dislikes Bitcoin. And the reason that they dislike Bitcoin is because Bitcoin provides an alternative to the IMF loan slavery system. Because these loans aren't given for free. They come with concessions, right? So the IMF is freaking out and saying, holy cow, these developing countries could get up on their feet without having to come to us, and that freaks them out. So this is the same IMF that's finally admitting the quiet part out loud. This is something that is so obvious, right? And again, no one is better than their incentives. Obviously, people in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Iran, in Afghanistan, that, according to the US dollar system, they're not entitled to have bank accounts because they're too risky for them to open, quote unquote, too risky for them to open bank accounts. Bitcoin's for them. They could just download a Bitcoin wallet and boom, they are their own bank all of a sudden, especially if they write down their seed words and stuff. So all of this is kind of happening, but this, these are kind of theories. These are things that, are we're talking about. It's going to happen. But yesterday it was announced that Venezuela to accelerate cryptocurrency shift as oil sanctions return. The U.S. the Treasury Department last week gave PDVSA customers and providers until May 31st to wind down transactions under a general license it did not renew due to lack of electoral reforms. The move will make it more difficult for the country to increase oil output and exports as companies will have to wait for individual U.S. authorities to do business with Venezuela. PDVSA since last year has been slowly moving oil sales to USDT. Boy, are they going to learn the hard way when the U.S. government puts pressure on Tether to freeze certain accounts. And remember, Tether is one of the largest buyers of U.S. treasuries, and Tether has been working with U.S. authorities to freeze certain transactions. And I don't blame them for doing so. They're a centralized entity. They're a company, right? And if they're a company, if you're a centralized entity, there is a metaphorical head to go after, right? You can only find truly uncensorable money and a truly decentralized protocol, the only one being Bitcoin when it comes to money. A digital currency, also known as Tether, whose value is pegged to the US dollar and designed to maintain a stable value. The return of oil sanctions is speeding up the shift, a move to reduce the risk of sale proceeds getting frozen in foreign bank accounts due to the measures. Quote, we have different currencies according to what is stated in contracts, Venezuelan oil minister Pedro Tequila told Reuters last week, adding that in some contracts, digital currencies might be the preferred payment method. By the end of the first quarter, PDVSA has moved many spot oil deals not involving swaps to a contract model demanding prepayment for half of each cargo's value in USDT. PDVSA is also requiring any new customers applying to conduct oil transactions to hold cryptocurrency in a digital wallet. The requirement has been enforced even in some old contracts that do not state the use of USDT, the people said. So again, I always say this many, many times over, that all roads lead to Bitcoin. Why? Because USDT can be frozen and anything that isn't sufficiently decentralized will inevitably be co-opted. Now, we did talk about this yesterday, but I'm going to bring it up again because it relates to what we're talking about. Here is Stephen Lupka, managing director at Swan Private, and he says the U.S. House has officially voted to transfer frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. This is a major blow to the willingness of foreign countries to hold U.S. treasuries. Bob Burnett, the CEO and founder of Barefoot Mining, responded, or quote tweeted, better said, the message this sends to the world is horrible. This will come back to haunt the U.S. At least those that believe that the global reserve currency is a good thing for the U.S. The move will be recognized to be an inflection point in the downfall of the U.S. dollar. Yes, 100%. When you weaponize the money, when you politicize the money, which is not in the definition of money, money should not be political. There are unintended consequences, and those unintended consequences are not necessarily felt by the politicians that are coming up with these genius ideas. Those unintended consequences are usually felt by the populations of these countries, right? So this is where Bitcoin comes into play, because Bitcoin provides this life raft in this ocean of fiat politics shit, right? It's just this life raft, and it keeps you afloat, and you don't even have to deal with it. You could see it happening, but you don't have to, you choose not to participate, right? But again, I think it's a big win in the sense that the IMF, you know, one of the enemies of Bitcoin, one of Bitcoin's most vocal detractors, one of Bitcoin's harshest critics, finally said the quiet part out loud that, hey, holy cow, there's people in countries that are using Bitcoin to transact across the border. They're using it to store value. And then, of course, as Bitcoiners, we say, no shit, Sherlock. Like, obviously that's the case. Because no one's better than their incentives. Apparently, politicians don't believe in incentives. Apparently, politicians believe that they can make incentives, right? But I think Bitcoiners are humble enough to realize that no one is better than their incentives. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Opti and then Paul.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, love to see that the signal is spreading. You know, the IMF admits people are turning to Bitcoin because inflation and horrible financial systems in the country. So I love to see that they're at least acknowledging it. But if you scroll down a little bit, and I was trying to read it while it was kind of cut off at the end, Nico, it said, but cautions against it because reasons, i.e. they can't control it. Like, it's so funny. They're like, yeah, this is what's happening. People are moving towards Bitcoin. Yeah, here, let's pull it up. At the very bottom, Nico, at the very bottom. However, the IMF report also cautions against the potential risk associated with the widespread use of Bitcoin for... I can't read it when you turn it blue. I'm colorblind. Read it.
However, the IMF report also cautioned against the potential risks associated with the widespread use of Bitcoin for cross-border flows. The lack of oversight and the anonymity provided by cryptocurrencies can complicate the efforts of regulators to monitor and control financial transactions to prevent illicit activities such as money laundering. Meanwhile, the biggest money launderers are the politicians themselves. And again, the reason that people are choosing it for cross-border payments is the anonymity. I mean, it contradicts itself when they say residents of countries with restrictive financial regulations, and then they're literally talking about lack of regulations. Like it's so absurd. Like, these people are like smelling their own,
the projection is strong.
The projection is strong. Like, they can't come to terms with the fact that it is precisely the regulations, it is precisely the lack of anonymity that that is the reason that people are seeking an alternative in the first place. Like, they are their own problem. But the thing is, that doesn't employ bureaucrats. That doesn't employ the IMF. Right. It's a decentralized peer-to-peer protocol, right? They actually have to provide value. They can't just be rent seekers, and they can't comprehend the world. What's that? The quote from Sinclair, Opti, I forget. Like
when it demands job to profit off the system, they can't see what's wrong with the system.
Yeah,
I'm butchering it, but
it's like something along the lines of like, when your livelihood depends.
You can't convince someone.
You can't convince someone whose livelihood depends on the thing that you're trying to convince them against, right? Something along those lines. We're paraphrasing and we're butchering it, but that's the point, right? They can't.
I guess you can't convince me that Bitcoin's not money, though.
Yeah, so exactly. We're good.
Man, love it.
Oh man.
But yeah, all right. Just I do want to touch on the Venezuela thing, but before I do that, the IMF basically says, we've been controlling these nations for a while, and they're moving away from our system, and they're moving to a system that they can't control. But that's the bad part about it, is that we can't control it. It's like the projection's strong here. Anyways, I do want to touch on the Venezuela stuff a little bit. So the Venezuelan news is, in my opinion, a very interesting development. And I've been saying this for a while. I think there's baby steps to eventually getting everyone on the Bitcoin standard. considered. A lot of people, if you're in a country with very bad fiat currencies, you'll eventually go to the dollar, because it's the strongest shit coin out there. I mean, fiat money out there. And then usually a lot of people, they'll get into Bitcoin, they'll get distracted by shit coins, and then eventually all roads lead to Bitcoin. So I think it's baby steps towards getting energy priced in Bitcoin, which I think is the real end game here, is when we can finally get energy priced in something that cannot be manipulated, which I think it's coming. You can see this happening in real time with all of the recent energy developments in Bitcoin mining. But I also want to double down on the idea that I think that is a bit worrying, that Venezuela is pricing it in Tether, not just for what Nico was saying, but for more of the line of what Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb have been saying. So you need to go watch the TFTC interview of Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb. They just dropped. And I think that's the real nefarious nature of this development. Like, everyone is concerned about ordinals and inscriptions right now, but I think the real threat is the proliferation of synthetic dollars on Tether in developing nations. And few people are talking about this, and just doubling down on that idea. Like, I'm not here to push synthetic dollars on people. I'm not here to continue the fiat system with my blockchain on there. It's like, I'm here to push Bitcoin and free money from state. I want people to interact with freedom money, truly decentralized money, a money that can't be controlled, that can't be debased, a money outside the control of a small cabal of people. But I also understand that it's baby steps. People are having to learn a whole new system. It took us a while. We do need a little compassion and empathy, because we didn't get Bitcoin overnight. Not all of us were Austrian economists before we found Bitcoin. So there is a learning curve, but I think the meme remains the same. All roads lead to Bitcoin, and eventually they'll realize that, hey, I do not want to price my energy in Tether. I do not want stable coins, quote unquote. Like, that's not what we're here to do. Everything will be repriced in Bitcoin. Energy will be repriced in Bitcoin. And that's when things become unstoppable.
Bitcoin is the stable coin. Oof.
Bitcoin is the stable coin.
Yeah, that's so hard to really ingrain in your brain and unlearn.
100%.
Yeah, we go back and forth with this at Bitcoin Jungle. Well, not really. We've never thought about, having Tether, but we've been up and down, price-wise. Right now, this is the biggest bull market we've had, and people really get to feel the saving in Bitcoin with the number go up. And it really is interesting how that changes the minds of people once they actually touch it and feel it and use it in the markets and use it to go buy other things. And yeah, it's completely already changing their behavior. It's fun to watch.
That's literally my favorite aspect of Bitcoin. All the technical is cool. All the geopolitics is cool. I know Nico loves the geopolitics.
I'm how do you have such a good grasp of all these different?
Yeah, Nico loves the geopolitics. But personally, what I love the most is the psychological, cultural change, the behavioral change behind Bitcoin. Because I say all the time, if it's done it for me, then I know it can do it for everyone else. And just watching people wake up to what you just said, Paul, that's the most interesting things that I see happening. And Bitcoin literally just saturating popular culture and people living a better life. That's all anyone wants, is just live a better life. So Bitcoin allows this.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. All right, guys, before we get onto the culture, I do want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor. And of course, I'm talking about the Orange Pill app. It's probably a good idea to stack friends who stack sats. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. Download the Orange Pill app today, and it will show you the Bitcoiners that are around you. So if you're moving to a new city or traveling, you want to see Bitcoiners who are around you, you could download the Orange Pill app, and it will show you the Bitcoiners who are around you. And it also has a very clever filtration system so that you'll only find Bitcoiners and other like-minded individuals on the app. Join the 10,003 Bitcoiners who are currently on the Orange Pill app. It is the #1 resource for creating Bitcoin-only events. And also, Simply Bitcoin has its own dedicated Orange Pill app group chat, which you could join by following the link or clicking the link down in the video description or podcast description. And download the Orange Pill app today. It's probably a good idea to stack friends who stack sats. After all, Bitcoiners are going to be some of the most powerful, influential people in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's probably a good idea to build up your Bitcoin Rolodex. Anyways, everybody, let's get to the culture. We have a lot to talk about.
The Daily Culture.
All right, everybody. Gabby Rex, the most trusted place to buy sell, and host mining equipment. Check out our sponsor by checking the link or following or scanning the link on or clicking the link and scanning the QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to the Telegram marketplace where you connect with a member of their sales team. They make purchasing their products easy and transparent. You could also sell your mining equipment with Kaboom Racks. Access their vast network of domestic and international customers when you sell your mining equipment with Kaboom Racks. This is where I personally buy my Bitcoin mining ASICs. Start your mining journey today. Check out Kaboom Racks. All right, Opti, it's all yours.
Let's go. All right. So, Paul, I think you're most famous right now for the work you're doing down in Costa Rica. I do have a little couple videos here of you paying down there. So I don't know if we want to start with there, but actually, first and foremost, what is Bitcoin Jungle? And also, did you guys get inspired by El Salvador?
Yeah. So we were inspired by El Salvador. We just forked the Bitcoin beach wallet, called it Bitcoin Jungle. I have nothing to do with the founding of it. I just kind of, heard the signal and went there. We were living in one part of Costa Rica and then moved down to the Uvita area. And yeah, it's just fork. And it started in the markets and you could buy everything with Bitcoin. It's like expanded to restaurants, hotels, everywhere. And now what you're seeing in the video is there's actually an off-ramp. So if this guy doesn't accept Bitcoin yet, I'm working on this guy, you can actually sell it with a Costa Rican Venmo, which is called SinPay. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm selling Bitcoin for orange juice because I have $0 and
Bars.
I use Bitcoin only.
Let's go. Okay, so on the ground, how many, you mentioned it, how many stores and restaurants, and is there like a thriving community? Is this a small community? Like what's going on down there?
Yeah, it's getting legit now. I used to hesitate when people would call it a circular economy, but it's getting quite circular now. That's El Salvador.
Okay.
But yeah, there's 300 plus merchants in Uvita, and then we have a map within the app that's got dots where all the merchants are. I've been spending time in Santa Teresa getting like a small group of like hotels and restaurants on board and gyms, and but it's cool. We've been interviewing. I've always am very curious. I always ask the farmers at the market yo, what do you guys do with the Bitcoin? And they're always like, we usually just save it. And then sometimes we spend it within, and then they hardly ever sell it. So pretty cool.
Okay, so how long have you been down there? And then what's the process of onboarding?
That's John Chanel, not Paul.
I know, but this is the Bitcoin Jungle Twitter.
Yeah, might as well plug John's retreat. He's having a retreat soon.
There you go.
Or something like that in Bitcoin Jungle. Come spend some sats, see what it's all about down there.
So how long have you been down there? Yeah, how long have you been down there?
Been in Costa Rica since December of 2021. And since then, I just never really left. I came down, I drove from California all the way to Costa Rica with...
You drove, amazing.
Yeah, it was a mission. I had a bunch of baseball gear for Nicaraguans in my truck. And I just played Santa Claus as I went through Nicaragua and donated a bunch of gear. But one of the outside missions of that whole trip was to go stop in El Salvador for the first Adopting Bitcoin conference. And I was a closet maxi for years and just never met Bitcoiners in my life. So if any of y'all are just closet maxis in there, never not going out and meeting in meet space, I highly recommend that, because ever since that day, it just kind of changed my life and have been just kind of following the Bitcoin signal since then. And it's been great.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So I'm guessing that maybe you've gone through the process of orange pilling some of these merchants yourself. So what's that process like, and how can other people learn from that?
Well, yeah, the process, right now Bitcoin Jungle has reached this kind of culture, people are aware of it, obviously now. It's pretty big. The wallet of Satoshi was such a great orange peeling tool, and so is Bitcoin Jungle, because all you got to do is put in your phone number, and then you can just already accept sats. So it's pretty quick and easy, and I like to just send it to them right away and have them see how quick the Lightning Network can work, and go from there. I usually, now that we have this SinPay off ramp, it used to be just Lee, the guy who founded the app, walking around with cash to offer people to cash out. And now there's an off ramp right away. So I just tell this guy on the beach, Jose, yo, if you need to sell some, you could just do it right there with SinPay. And I actually show him the SinPay, the Venmo off ramp that's built within the app that doesn't have KYC. That's absolutely badass and simple. And yeah, but this guy, another example, he started holding Bitcoin, and I was like, what are you going to do with that? He's like, these are just for saving. He prefers Bitcoin. So if you're ever down in Playa Hermosa near Uvita, go get a lesson from him, spend some sats. And yeah, we've been doing some more interviews like this. We'll post some more of these soon, talking about, some of the vendors' unique stories with Bitcoin. It's like actually happening down here. It's really
That's
cool.
awesome. There's a pretty big community there as well, right? I know personally, I'm not going to dox them or anything, but I know some good friends of mine that are Bitcoiners that are pretty big, pretty reputable, pretty influential in the space that have decided to go to Costa Rica and kind of set up shop and just kind of live there and stuff. So could you talk a little bit about that, about the Bitcoin community?
I think everyone knows who you're talking about, but yeah, let's not dox them.
I mean, we can go ahead and dox, what's his name from Bull Bitcoin, but
but I'm not just talking. Francis is obvious, and he makes his presence.
Okay, good.
There, so.
I won't dox the other ones either then. But he's the one that helped with the SynPay off ramp, and it is interesting. Like, there's something about Central America, Bitcoin, like freedom, health. I work for Paul Saladino as well. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of people coming down. Some that just check it out, and some have come down and started living there. It's like almost this return to nature, and that's kind of big in the Bitcoin space, at least in my echo chamber. And yeah, we're really attracting a lot of Bitcoiners.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. But I do want to touch on one thing that you said, and I think it kind of goes into the meme of, Bitcoin changes you, you don't change Bitcoin. And I think the signal here is you saying that they're not going back into their, local fiat currency. They're like, no, I'm hodling this Bitcoin. Whether they know the hodl meme or not, they understand that saving in Bitcoin improves their lives. And it's kind of amazing that it's happening organically. It's like no one's telling them to really just like hodl your Bitcoin. They're like, no, like, it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, that meme of Bitcoin might be worth $1 million one day. Like, yeah, maybe. So if you're not scared, you hold 1% of your wealth in there. Oh, look, it's 2%, 3%, 10% of my wealth. Oh shit, what's happening? All right, what is this Bitcoin stuff? It's kind of what happened to me. Like, just graduated from college and threw my check in there, and then it was like, wait a minute, this is like all my net worth all of a sudden. And what is this stuff? It forced me down the rabbit hole. I had to learn, became sovereign, and then I've been chasing that signal ever since.
Love it.
And then it doesn't help with, look at me. There's my bank account. Like I tell them, like, look, I have $0. I might be crazy. You don't have to be like me, but there's people like this that exist, and maybe that helps.
No, bro, I feel like that's a rite of passage for every
Wait, hold
Bitcoiner.
on, Nick. I get those same emails, bro.
I was not scared.
Oh my God.
But orange pilling your local barber, that's the way, by the way. Like, he's literally the guy in the center of the town. He talks to everybody. He's got these big Bitcoin flags now, or signs. And I was just talking to this guy. He was like, "Yeah, I saw this sign, Bitcoin in the barber." I just met him the first time. He's like, "Uh-huh." And so little by little, pretty cool. This guy's Argentinian, so he gets it. There's a lot of Argentinians in the other place I live in, Costa Rica, and they all kind of just have the scars, right? The fiat scars, and from the hyperinflation, inflation, whatever currency devaluation shit show.
So I kind of want to talk about the mindset over there, kind of in Costa Rica, right? I feel like just kind of getting the energy off of you and just the energy off of these pictures and these videos and whatever. It really seems like people like have achieved some type of zen, some type of peace, some type of happiness. Obviously, there's poverty there. It is Central America after all, but I do see some level of peace that I don't think you can see in the U.S. You don't really find that. It's always the hustle and bustle. It's always the endless grind. It seems like life is a little bit slower over there, but I mean that in a good way, of course.
I mean, yes and no. There's not absolute poverty over there. As you saw the video, I was teaching NVK. He was talking about just the difference between some places in Brazil. And it's not what's the word, like empty. There's hope. There's some hope. But what's bigger than that is there's this word, pura vida. I say it all the time. That's ingrained in the culture. It means pure life. And I think just that software runs in the back of everybody's head. It's completely overtaken my brain. And just shit happens, pura vida. Great things happen, pura vida. Good waves, pura vida. So I swear that's kind of just in the minds of all the people, and it gives just that little reminder.
So
that
what
little
does
meme.
that?
And
what does that
I
mean?
was just in El Salvador,
Pura
like,
vida?
and it means pure life. But you
No,
can
no,
say
but
it for
like,
everything. You say it for hi, bye.
but like, what does it mean? Like, what is the essence of that? So there's a really, to kind of give a little bit of context and preface, like there is a very famous, the very famous franchise here in Miami, and the name of the franchise is Pura Vida, and they have some of the most delicious, like kind of organic wraps and smoothies and all that stuff. But what is the essence of Pura Vida?
To me, I could just speak for me, and I'm no Tico. I'm just like a gringo that's moved down there for 3 years now. But like, it's just a reminder to take care of the earth, return to earth, pure life, right? And it's a reminder to just relax. Pura vida, shit's gonna happen. And I think, yeah, like I was saying, it's kind of infected all the people down there. So it is kind of maybe a little bit of a slower pace of life. Your truck's gonna break down, pura vida. And it's a good mental software to run. And kind of like Hakuna Matata. Nice. It's exactly that. And we were just talking, I was in El Salvador talking to someone that's got some influence up there with Bukele and whatnot. And he's like, man, we need something like Pura Vida. So ever since then, I've been thinking like, what is another set of words that they could have that'd be authentic to their country? And it's just so good. It runs so deep into the core.
Man, I see it. I see the Pura Vida within you, bro. It's in your
hair.
You
gotta come feel it though, too.
It's in your hair. I feel it. If I'm ever next to you in meet space, I feel the Pura Vida coming out of your hair. It's radiating.
Yes. Awesome.
Okay, we do have a question in here in the chat. Do you need Spanish to live in Bitcoin jungle, or can white people get by with just English?
Not at all. Gringos, there's a ton of gringos. Like, I mean, it's better to connect with Spanish, but you're totally fine. Like, I try my best. I kind of look a little bit Tico. This is some heart rate monitor. I don't know why I put this on, but you don't need it at all. I'm always bummed when they start to speak to me in English when I'm trying to speak Spanish. So, yeah.
Love it. Okay, let's actually last words on Bitcoin Jungler, and then let's pivot to your new work with Primal, and then also let's touch on with the work you're doing with Paul.
Cool.
So, what's the last message you want to get to the audience out there about Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica?
My message isn't necessarily about Bitcoin Jungle. I think it's just about your friends and your circles. And if you're obsessed with Bitcoin, you just keep radiating that. And yeah, being that change and actually taking the time to show people wallets and stuff. Like, it's so ridiculous, like how I spend my day sometimes. I don't make any money with Bitcoin Jungle. We're not really a business. We don't make any money. Like, we might make money somehow one day with an exchange in the back end. But anyways, the amount of wallets I've set up and point of sales, and like, it's just the human interaction, the human to human thing with Bitcoin is everything to me, the social layer. And that also means you got to be a great representative if people want to get into this new culty money. I mean, it's a joke, but like, if you're the Bitcoin guy, you have to be like great. And remember that, like, because people are looking at you, and if you falter in any way, then why would they trust this money that they set you up with? That is the closest thing that we have to truth on the earth.
100%. All right, let's pivot that. Let's go to the work you're doing with Paul. I don't know. Is it Saladino? Is that how you say his last name? All right. Yeah. And I think that's a great example of what you just said. Like, you have to be a walking billboard. So what are you doing with Paul? And then I guess maybe what's the TLDR with the work you're doing?
Remember, guys, Bitcoin is a cult. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Great. Paul Saladino, if you guys don't know him, he's definitely a walking billboard. And it made me somewhat, with my zero bank account, it changed the way I do these things. Because Paul's a walking billboard, as in he has this diet that he preaches to all these people, or not even a diet, just a lifestyle and like his thinking, and he shares his thoughts, and he lives 100% by those thoughts. Because if you have an opinion but you don't live by your opinion, then you're a fraud. So lately I'm running this Bitcoin experiment down here. I'm like, all right, so I got to go 1,000%. TLDR on Paul is just like, I met him in the gym in Santa Teresa, and that's why we moved down to Vita. He moved down there, and I just kind of followed him over there, and I've been helping him out with his social media and helping him scale. and it's been pretty crazy. I feel like we've completely changed the culture. I mean, everybody's starting to think that vegan maybe isn't the, maybe, I mean, I'm in an echo chamber, but I think culture has changed a little bit around food and seed oils, and just basically the consistent memeing of those things and videos.
Awesome. What is the TLDR on Paul's diet philosophy? I know it's like whole foods, get a lot of protein. I know he's a huge raw milk advocate.
Oh yeah, baby. We got the best raw milk over here, and you can pay for it in Bitcoin. It's so rad. But yeah, really at the essence of it is eat real food. If you're struggling, then you're going to have to start eliminating more foods. And his eccentric approach, which is why you bolted him into fame, is that he doesn't eat vegetables, and he actually does not, because he thinks that those are not they've been way overhyped, which I kind of share that opinion too. But yeah, eat real food. Meat is not going to kill you. And if it's in a bag, if it has more than one ingredient, forget about it. Just don't eat it unless you have to or whatever. But that's pretty much it. He gets way more technical and will offer his very sciencey opinion. But if you just ditch foods with ingredient labels, your health is going to rapidly improve. Yeah. And if you just kind of return to monkey a little bit, as in waking up early, seeing the sunrise, and going to bed shortly after the sun goes down, and eliminating like crazy blue light all the time. And I mean, he goes way extreme. He unplugs his Wi-Fi. Yeah.
He does eat fruits though, right? To be clear, he does eat fruits.
Yeah.
Love it.
And he's like right there, right when the Bitcoiners all went carnivore. Like he was kind of leading that charge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Great. Okay. Last question, because you are working with Nostr, and this is Visnok, and he's wondering what social medias are used for communicating in Costa Rica and El Salvador. But you can just talk on what your experience is in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, yeah, Facebook still, like those Facebook groups.
Okay, all right. Well, okay, let's talk about your new position at Primal. What are you doing with Primal? And for anyone out there that still isn't on Primal,
what are y'all doing?
What would you tell them?
Yeah, if you want to use Nostr, or if you're scarred from Nostr 10 months ago because it was way too confusing, then just download Primal and freaking start zapping away and have fun, because nobody can rug your NSEG. Nobody can rug Nostr at all. So get over there and start being the change, because, I mean, we keep seeing it. It's so annoying. I see people talk about, oh, I'm censored. About it. There's actually something you can do. You could actually just, spin up an npub and NSEG private keys on any Nostr client and go use it. Boom.
Yeah, great. 100%.
And for Primal, yeah, we're just right now. I haven't even told anybody that I've started to work with Primal yet, so this is the first.
Breaking.
I have a job, guys. Actually, most people don't think I have a job. They just think I'm like some rich kid or something, but that's not true. Yeah, so I'm obsessed. I've gone to bed every day thinking about it, just like I used to go to bed every day thinking about seed oils. Like Bitcoin, Nostr, free speech, and I think there's a big market for it. And Primal's the easiest way to get started. And there's just like Bitcoin, how there's like custodial lightning, self-custody, all that. This is just like the easiest way to get in there. It's like Wallet of Satoshi was. This is just the easiest way to, show people Nostr. And you can download a wallet on there with very limited KYC and start feeling zaps. And there's so much stuff I can't talk about that's being planned that's about to be on there. It's about to be more fun too. But it's just social media created with intention, as opposed to what happened where we just made social media companies instead of protocols. So protocols over companies, protocols over corporations.
Love it. Love it. Okay, I might put you on the spot here, Paul, but do you think Primal, or rather Nostr in general, can knock off Twitter's network effects?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's scary.
Love it. At least he's honest.
I have no idea. Like, there can be these come to Jesus, come to Nostr, come to Bitcoin moments anytime. Like, there's so many advertisements. We see them all the time on Twitter, And I just was reading before I hopped on, like Twitter's coming out with pretty much tipping a whole wallet. And, I think they want to have it so Twitter is just your bank that you use. I'm already doing that with freedom. Like, you got Freedom WeChat, or you got Twitter, or you got, the real commie WeChat in China. So, I mean, hopefully Twitter won't be that bad, but it's still going to be surveillance. You got to put your social, your number, your email, your everything. Whereas Nostr, you don't. It's cool. Cool.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Just wrapping up, Paul. What would be your last 2 sats to the audience? What's the last message you want to give to the people out there? What's the final embodiment of Paul's message for the audience?
I mean, what else do I say? Pura vida. That's it.
Let's go. Awesome. Awesome, man.
Well, dude, it seems like that's the next trip we got to do, Opti. We got to go to Costa Rica, bro.
I'm down.
We checked El Salvador off the list. Now we got to go find out what Paul and the Pura Vida crew and country are doing, and just go down to Bitcoin Jungle. I've heard good things about it, but I got to go experience it in the flesh. Anyways, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today on Simply Bitcoin Live.
Wait, Nico, to cut you off again like every other show. Paul, what do you want to plug? Where can people find you? Do you know your NPub?
NPub. No. Paul in the Jungle everywhere except for Twitter, because somebody already has that. So Paul in the Jungle on all the normie platforms and Nostr, and then the Philosophy on Twitter.
Philosophy.
Thanks.
All right, guys, go follow Paul in the Jungle Philosophy. That's where you can find Paul and all the on the interwebs. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. But the number one thing you could do to help push the peaceful Bitcoin revolution is do what Paul's doing. Just don't have a bank account. Just Bitcoin standard for the win. And keep getting those emails from Bank of America and Wells Fargo. Anyways, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, we'll be back tomorrow for a new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Stay tuned for Simply Bitcoin Original, dropping hot fire, Rustin and John later on today. Peace out, everybody.
This episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, on a mission to enable independence.